Okay, welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to again be working with XNA, but it's going to be a little bit different. Basically, this, as you know by the title, is going to be a tile editor tutorial series. Now, you may have seen some other ones, and a lot of those other ones use just straight up XNA. What we're going to be doing is we're going to use some code that Microsoft designed to use C# and Windows forms to embed XNA into a Windows form, and then be able to have access to all the controls that come with Windows forms to create an application to help you quickly make and design maps. So if you're a more artistic person, you can have this create yourself a map editor and easily make games. So to start, you're going to need to first get some resources. Now, the very first thing you'll need is you're going to need to go to the xbox.create.msdn.com, basically create.msdn.com, and navigate to the Winforms Series 1 graphics device, and you're going to need to download the sample. Now, when you download it and you open it up and you extract it, the files that we're going to need are the graphics device control, the graphics device service, and the service container. That's all we're going to need. So for right now, I'm just going to copy these to the clipboard. And once you do that, do the same, copy it to the clipboard, and then that's all we'll need that for. So you can open up Visual Studio, and we're going to create a new project. Now, I'm going to switch the to a new folder. I'm going to save it in here, and it's going to be a Windows game. I know I said we're working in Windows Forms, but in order for Windows Forms to even know about XNA, we need to start as an XNA game so that we can have access to the XNA framework and the content pipeline. That's very important because we're going to be working with texture 2Ds. So in order to read in .xnb files, which is the XNA content type that it builds, you're going to need to make a XNA project. So we can just call it tile editor. And when it loads up, just run it real quick. See if it works. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to need to add some references. If you notice, there's no system.windows.forms at all in your references, so we're going to have to change that. So you're going to have to add a reference, and you're going to have to scroll down to system.windows.forms. And after you add that, there are some things we're going to have to change about the project itself. So open up go to Project and go to the Properties window. Now, because Windows Forms isn't high def, you're going to have to change to use the Reach API, the limited API, or else when you try and draw, you won't see anything. Now, under Application, we're going to need to have access to the XNA content pipeline reference, and that's not contained in just the client. We're going to need to access the entire .NET Framework 4, and when you change, you're going to get this. Just click Yes, and it's going to do that. Now, if you try running, you're going to get an error. I think. No, you didn't get an error. Well, ignore that for now. And then because we changed the .NET framework from the client profile to the regular complete .NET, you're going to see down here in the XNA, you're going to see all these up here, all the content pipeline stuff. Now what you're going to want to add is the Microsoft.xna.framework.content pipeline. So you're just going to add that. And that's it for the references. So we're done with that. Now I'm going to add a folder and call it editor forms. And we're going to add a new Windows form to that and just call it tile editor form or map editor. I'm going to call it map editor. Right? So now that we have this, now in our program, we won't be using the game file. We're not going to be touching this, so it's essentially doesn't matter to the project. And the reason is we're going to be changing this around. So these ifs, I'm just going to delete because we don't care, because we're not worrying about the game itself. And in here, the first thing you want to do is put stat thread like that. And what that means is that it's running the main thread as a static thread, because Windows Forms requires that it's the application run in a static thread. So you're going to get an error if you don't put that there. Now this using statement, we're going to have to change. We're going to change it to map editor equals new map editor. Now, of course, there's a problem because we included this in a folder that's a subfolder of tile editor. You're gonna have to import that. Since we no longer have a game, we can delete that. Now, if you haven't worked in Windows Forms themselves are run by using a static class called application, which is contained within system.windows.forms. So we're going to import system.windows.forms, and we're going to call application.run, and then pass in editor, and that'll run our main form in its own loop, in a loop and in its own thread. Now above it, there's a couple things we want to do. We want to call application.enable visual styles, and what this will do is your system has depending on what Windows OS you have, it has a window style. I think Windows 7 uses arrow. And there's one more thing, set compatible text rendering default, and just pass in false. False. So these two things just put before this. This one's not necessarily required, but it's always good to put there. And just click run, and there you go. Boom, your Windows form pops up. So now you're probably wondering, where does the XNA part come in? And that's what what we got from this. This is where that comes in. Those three classes that hopefully you copied to the clipboard. What we're going to do is create another folder and call it Winforms graphics device. And I'm just going to paste those three classes. Now we're going to create another folder called custom controls. And this is where we're going to create any custom form controls. And the one that we're going to create first is going to be map display, and it's going to be public. And what it's going to inherit from is Winforms graphics device control. And what we're going to do is, this is an abstract class, so we're going to implement the overridden methods. Now these two methods do essentially what they would do in XNA. This one draws, and this one initializes. So what we can do is call graphicsDevice.clear color.cornflowerblue, and this is going to require Microsoft XNA Framework. And what should happen is this should be completely fine. And so if you go in here, first we're going to build the entire project. And if you go to Toolbox, you should see a custom control, tile editor components, map display. Drag that onto the form, and you should see a nice cornflower blue, similar to XNA, map display. So if you were to run this, there it goes. It shows up, all nice and blue. So that's how you get XNA ready to go. I'm just going to delete that for a second. So this is where pretty much all the rendering of any maps that you are going to be editing and creating is going to go. It's all going to be handled in the map display. So to first set up the form, there's a couple things you're going to need. Well, first I'll show you where I am in the process of developing the map editor. This is what essentially we're achieving or working towards. Something like this where you can add layers. You can create a new map, 10 by 10 with 32 by 32 tiles. You hit accept, it pops up a grid, and then you can start editing the map. So in here, the very first thing we want to do is add a menu strip, file, new. That's good for now. And then you're going to want to add a container panel and stretch this, I don't know, about there. Resize this form as well. Not that size, just above there. And next thing, we're going to drop in our map display into the panel, and we're going to stretch it to the size of the panel. And we're going to set the panel to go into border style and fix 3D. So now what it'll look like is there's the indentation into the form. So move the map display so that it's all the way in the upper left hand corner of the panel. And then what we're going to do is, oh, we're not going to do that. Click on the panel, and if you like the size that it currently is, what you can do is, well, we're actually going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to drag this down, drag it over. That's a good size. Oh, that was the map display. Drag the panel over. Good size panel. Drag this in. And if you like the size of the panel, there's a way to make it so it'll never resize, and the size of it will be set. So right in here, 584, change it to 585 so that they're even. So 585 by 465. Then go into maximum size, change that to 585 and 465, and the min size to 585 and 465. So that's a set size and it's not resizable. And do the same thing with this, but set it to that same size. So 585, 465. with the map display. Maximum size 585, 465, or whatever you have it as. Don't just go by my numbers. Just conceptually do the same thing. So then if we run it, hopefully our map display is seamlessly located over this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually increase the size a bit to leave room for horizontal scroll bars. And we're going to do essentially the same thing with the map editor form. The map editor form isn't going to be resizable, because if we make it resizable, we'd have to shift and resize like pretty much every control on the form, which would be a nightmare coding wise. So essentially what we're just going to do is we're going to look at the size of this. I think 915 would be a good one. 915 by 600. So go to the maximum size, 915 by 600, and the minimum size, 915 by 600. So now if we were to run this, as you can see, if we try moving and resizing it, it doesn't do anything. So there we go. So now our form's not resizable. And so since it's not resizable, the maximize box, we should just set to false. So there you go. So that's essentially the basics to setting up the map editor. Now, two more things that you can throw in there quick are, if you go to all Windows form controls, you drop in a vertical scroll bar right up here and have it go all the way down to the edge, and drop in a horizontal scroll bar, have it go all the way to the edge. Now if you run it, there you go. So you have something that looks more and more like a tile editor. And these vertical and horizontal scroll bars will be used to, if you have a map that's bigger than the viewport size, you'll be able to scroll to be able to edit the entire map. So that's it for the very first tutorial. Now remember, all drawing, that's not really needed. If you ever accidentally click on something, it's something I should because if you're very new to Windows Forms and this is your first time, what happened was I double clicked on the map editor form itself, and that auto generated the map editor load event function. So if I delete this here, what'll happen is if I try running this, there will be problems. See, there's an error. Map editor load, no extension for that. See here how it auto-generated that code? Well, since that code doesn't exist and I deleted it manually, you have to delete it from here as well, from the auto-generated code. And now there's going to be no errors. And to get to that, because this is a partial classes essentially hide. It's split up, so it hides a lot of the code. You go to the editor form and go down, hit this arrow, and find this. And if you right click on it and click View Code, this is the actual implementation. And down here is all the window generated code. So if you ever need to edit something in here, this is how you get to it. So the map display initializes map display, draws in map display. So there you go. So later on we're going to create some attributes that'll allow us to load in content. I can give you two, just in case you want to expand on this on your own right after you finish watching this tutorial. Two things that you will definitely need are a content manager and a sprite batch, both of which use Microsoft.xna.framework.content and graphics. Now, the reason you need the content manager, of course, is so that you can load in content. So what you'll want to do is put all your content in here, like all your image tiles and things that you load in order to be able to draw on the form. And you'll load them in using this content. Now, what you have to do to initialize these is for content, you need to set it equal to new content manager. And as you can see, it takes in a couple things. It takes in the service provider and a root directory. Now, the service provider is located in in services. So that's a property that's contained within the graphics device control, the parent class. And as the string for the root directory, just passing content, the name here, the content root directory, and you'll be able to load in anything that's located in here, just as you would in a regular XNA game. And for the sprite batch, of course, it's just equal to a new sprite batch, and you pass in this the graphics device from this map display control. So now you can draw stuff using content from here and in a sprite batch, which you can call down here the begin and end method. So there you go. That's it for this tutorial. There'll be another one coming real soon that'll go into creating a tile, a layer, and a map class that'll allow us to read in and create maps. Thank you for watching.